If needlework is your passion, whether you're stitching by hand, machine, or mixing it all up, you're going to want to hear about the Mr. X Stitch Contemporary Needlework Prize 2025. This prize celebrates the best in modern stitch, and it's open to creatives from all around the world, whether you're a student or an emerging artist or a seasoned professional. And the best part, you don't have to send your work anywhere. Just upload high-resolution images to a private folder we will send you after you enter. You can enter more than one category, for instance, hand embroidery and 3D textiles. Just grab an entry for each one. And if you've got a student ID, you can get 50% off the entry price as well. The deadline for entering is 30th of June 2025, and entries are now open at xstitchmag.com/prize-entry. Thanks to our brilliant sponsors, Bookmarked Hub by Search Press and David and Charles, and the legends at Lowry Workstands. If you've got the stitch bug, this is your time. Show us what you've got. Enter the prize now. Visit xstitchmag.com/prize-entry to get your ticket today. Aaron Fein is a former architect who has become a machine embroidery textile sculptor, creating installation pieces that inspire conversation and are very thought-provoking. In this second part of our Needle Exchange, we discuss Aaron's journey as a textile artist and how his work has evolved, from using monochrome designs to incorporating dyes and colours which have added a depth and richness to his work. He also shares his experience of embracing freeform creativity and the liberation, some people call it terrifying liberation, that it brings. But Aaron highlights the value of having a purpose behind each of his artworks. And we look at how his background in architecture and some of the projects that he undertook were laying the foundations for the work that he's doing now. As expected, in the second part, we have those cultural touchpoint conversations, and we talk about Aaron's practice of Tai Chi, something that has kept him grounded for many years. I really enjoyed talking to Aaron. When I first saw his work in the Mr. X Stitch Contemporary Needlework Prize last year, I was taken by his intelligent approach to form and how the piece that won the Machine Embroidery Prize used light as a means of creating illusion. It was an interesting look at machine embroidery and something that he plays upon with skill and precision. And he's just a really nice guy who's making really nice work, and I think you'll enjoy this part of the conversation. If you do enjoy it, if you'd like to leave a review on your podcasting platform, that would be fab, and hopefully that'll inspire other machine embroidery types to come and have a listen as well. I'll be back next week with another Needle Exchange with a different artist. In the meantime, enjoy the show. You said fairly early on that you didn't really... Well, obviously you've not got much of a prior stitching heritage. I mean, can you, like when you were a kid, were you you must have been a creative sort to want to go into architecture, I would have thought.
Yeah, you know what I would do? I would go to the craft store and get pom-poms and googly eyes and make characters and stuff like that. But like never really, I don't remember ever really sewing anything,
what kind of stuff did you like to make when you were younger?
Kind of just anything that, like, I'm such a kinetic kind of learner that anything I can kind of put together, like that's how I understood the world. And it kind of goes back to what I said about just as a sculptor, it's like, well, I just come up with an idea and try and find, that's the thing. I always struggle with this because it's not just like, oh, I came up with the idea. Sometimes I'm just playing with things and materials, and it's like, then it gives me an idea that loops back, and it's like, how do I kind of expand on this? We would make, we make weapons and stuff like that, you're young boys, how do we do all this stuff? And my brother was the one who would make the intricate like models and stuff of airplanes and ships. And when he outgrew them, he gave them to me, and all I would do was destroy them. But like, for making my own stuff, I would just, it was always just a kind of way to explore and discover the world.
And did you follow that through when you became an architect? Because I don't know. I remember wanting to be an architect and then learning how long it takes to become an architect and then deciding I didn't want to be an architect anymore because
Right.
it was too much. But it feels like a lot of architecture is grounding dreams in reality, and that thing of, you can build a building that looks like a cloud, but it's got to have foundations, work that one out, and then sort of
Right.
extrapolate. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about as well?
Yeah, I mean, I just never got so deep into the profession myself because I think I was always, I just sitting at the desk and the patience that would take to see if that would pay off into creative freedom. I just I went for not the short. I just went for the things that I could just, again, my hands could touch this stuff, and I can do it. So I just kind of scrabbled my way through to make it work that way. But yeah, like the like on my website, like you said, there are these smaller installation projects that were very much about like creating like a wall out of string and threaded rod. It was just like three threaded rods, and then those rods have a spiral on it, and like that spiral became the path for a single piece of twine that would go around, and it would, because all the threads were aligned going down, you get a very straight, a series of parallel lines um, that created a surface. And then what that surface did was kind of acted a little bit like glass, where if light was reflecting off it, it just, you couldn't see through it. And then if light was behind it, you would see through it. So, for me, it's like that idea of subverting materials, or transforming them into some other realization was, yeah, I think that's what really drives me, is like just this discovery of finding something unexpected in materials.
Did you ever have a spirograph as a kid? I don't even know if they have those in America.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know the
Actually, I remember buying the spirograph for my kids when they were like, I don't know, 7 or 8 for, 1 year for their birthdays, because I thought like, hey, you know, this is such a cool toy. And I definitely remember having them and using them.
I feel like I think we've got one of those, and I really feel like I want to get it out. I'm probably going to get more out of it than my children are by a long shot. But
Right.
um, so then the interesting thing, like, because I've done a bit of digitized embroidery. I know what you mean about you just stare at it when you first get one for a long time, and I remember using it to try and do cross stitch. And I also learned as well that if you stop staring at it, the chances of it snarling up on you exponentially increase. I don't know what that is, whether it's just bad luck or whatever. But the interesting thing about digitized embroidery, and the thing that I see the connection for you, is that a lot of it is about engineering and about surface tension and about
Right.
distortion and about all those kind of factors. So it feels like, in a way, that architecture and all the things that you've gone through are a perfect training for the fundamental principles of these design. Have you found that you've really taken to it because you've already kind of learned a lot of this physical law stuff?
Um, yeah, I would say that's probably a given. And I just remember realizing at a certain point, that like, oh, the thread is my, like, that's my lowest common denominator. I can't, unless you get a thin thread size, and I can go a little bit lower with that, but you can't fight that. Like, you're never going to make something, so intricate that it's going to overcome the the dimensions of that thread. So when you're dealing
Mm,
with it, um, you have to deal with that. And the early part of doing the embroidery was learning about, like, oh, if you put too much thread on top of each other, it's going to snarl and break, because it's too tight, it heats up, and it's not possible. And I think part of my craft, and like, the thing that I kind of push myself on is like, you know how how few layers can I do? Like,
mm,
like how simple can I make it and still get the effects I want without having to belabor it, like, oh, I'm going to layer up. Because one of the actual really interesting things that I found with the embroidery, especially when I switched over to the industrial machine, was it was almost like working as a printmaker, where you get a hoop, you hoop something, and if your fabric's good and taut, if you especially if you're using synthetic fabric, it's like a drum. It doesn't distort.
Mm.
I could stitch something, take it off, leave it for a while, then think about some other stuff, and then go back and do it, and add more layers to it. And that started to really help when I would say in like 2019 or so, discovered I can paint on the threads and dye them. That was like a real kind of turning point for me, because I went on this, did an artist residency that I was invited to. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's Aramont Pentaculum. It's in Tennessee,
Right.
at the Aramont School. And they said, do you want to come and be in the fiber group? And what was interesting was, like, I had never worked around other fiber artists, because didn't, I didn't get schooled in that. And then I did it
Mm.
myself. And so I went, and I was in a group of about 5 or 6 people who all were doing different things. And a couple of them were dying, like dyeing wool threads, just whatever. And I was like, huh. I went down with, a bunch of pre-stitched stuff that I thought, oh, maybe I'll like collage this, or, because I wasn't bringing my machine. I was just going to bring raw material and see what happened. And then I was just dunking stuff in dye baths. And what I discovered there was, um, it wasn't my discovery, but people helped
Mm.
point it out to me. But it was, you know, natural fabrics and fibers take dye, and synthetic ones resist them. And here I have the capability of working with synthetic fabrics as underlays, or natural fabrics as underlays, and I have the option to use uh, synthetic threads or natural threads, or a mix of both. And again, it was just this whole new realm of saying, like, how can I introduce color into this, um, and like, what variables can I play with to get different effects. So to go back to that idea of working as a printmaker on the machine, I would start to stitch something out, paint on some of the threads in one color, then go back, stitch more white threads, and then paint another color, and start to use the machine and its ability to layer, and this new technique in there. Um, but like the what was interesting about the painting also was, as I was developing early on, and kind of doing the geometric stuff, the light stuff, and starting to make canvas pieces, frame canvas pieces. And I started to get feedback from people in the art world about it. One of the things I heard was like, this feels a little mechanical. It doesn't feel like the artist's hand is in this. And,
Hmm.
it stung a little, because it's like, well, you don't know how much going into like figuring this out, and like, how much goes into making these things. But, it was fair criticism, because it's their reading of it. And then that discovering the ability to paint on this really did let me introduce that element of the hand and the unexpected, because that's something I always struggled with. Like, I'm, you know, good at the technical part, and good at the kind of imagining, and kind of designing, like an architect. Like, you design it, and then you kind of produce it. But I was always much more hesitant, cautious, uptight, you pick the word, to like just do something free on it. And now I had kind of created a structure that of like a geometry or bones to um, to what I was making, that I felt confident enough to then do this other freeform stuff on, which added to the effect of the light. Because if you have a gradation of color going over something, your eye is starting to see gradation from the start, and then as you move along, it's starting to change more and more because of the light. So it it definitely reinforced what I was doing to begin with, and made it richer, I thought.
Yeah, that's interesting because the minute you start putting, like you say, dyes, and that means you have to consider what materials you're using. In a way, you're just adding layers of risk into the process, aren't you?
Mm.
Because prior to that, I guess monocolor, monochrome, whatever kind of designs is it's low risk, isn't it? It's kind of like you're just doing the one thing in a certain way, and there's a safe space for experimentation, which I guess
Right.
is akin to some of the things you were saying before about being a designer, because you can plan it out and it can be machine precisely and all that sort of thing. Whereas now you're taking these steps of being like, okay, let the die fall where it may, and that kind of thing.
Right.
How do you feel about that? Is it terrifying, or are you just going, well, just go for it?
Yeah, no, it was really liberating because, I always kind of, yeah, did I say I wanted to do it? I mean, I
Mm,
felt like I can do it, but I just needed some sort of framework in which I could, justify it, understand it,
mm,
so it's not just like totally random. Like I don't like doing random stuff. I like there being a purpose for like everything I'm doing. Um, and I feel like I had a good natural color sense that I never got to exercise.
mm. And you'd also built up such a foundation of understanding about the mechanics of the machine stitch and the fabric tension and that kind of thing, that you're experimenting with something that's familiar, isn't it? It's not like you're going straight out the back and going, right, I'm going to make ice
Right.
sculptures with a chainsaw, never ever done it before, that sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. How do the ideas come now? Because I know that you've still done quite a few pieces of work that are very much connected to current events and to your own experiences and stuff. Is that the theme that underpins a lot of your work, like your journey through life and your perception of the world around you? Is that how you feel it goes?
No, I mean I feel like now I'm kind of more into the geometry stuff that I'm doing now, the forms. I feel like it's pushing something that's more universal, like
Mm-hmm.
uh, forms that just feel like they could exist in the world, even though they're kind of made up or imagined. Or this, I'm trying to remember if at some point I thought to myself, because this is like glass, I kind of want it to feel like a window, and like I was, pushing that for a while, and then once it was, I think this piece right here is like where
Mm-hmm.
I was able to dye this piece of linen, do this geometry on it, and I pre-dyed those turquoise squares. That was separate. Then I appliqued them on, and suddenly like all the elements started to come together to feel like, oh yeah, now I feel like I'm getting at some of this stuff I wanted to try to get at with architectural, stained glass type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to, kind of create a sense of peace on the work, some, just calm, uh, which I was going for with the flags, but that was
Mm.
so charged in other ways. But this is just, more of an abstract representation of that for me.
Yeah, and I mean that's fair, because I think I know I did a NeedleXChange with Jack Roberts, JPR Stitch, and his work is just abstract. And I think what it takes a lot of nerve, I think, personally, to do abstract work, because
Right.
you're not it's so it is conceptual. It's not very literal. People can interpret it in whichever way they want. But in the same way, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Because you're not particularly pushing forward a message, you're just saying, this is my offering to you. And I guess as well, you're looking at the simplicity of the shapes and the forms, which in and of themselves don't come with any baggage necessarily. So I
Yeah.
guess it is just, yeah, you're just offerings.
Yeah. And when I was an undergrad and I did like art and sculpture as an undergrad, I remember thinking like, oh man, abstract work terrifies me because who am I to do something like that and call it art,
Mm,
And
mm,
and so again, like actually the first thing my first artistic inspiration was architectural scaffolding, because I like lived in New York when I was young, and you go around the city and Christo, the guy who wraps all the buildings, right?
mm.
That guy, that
Yeah,
sculptor.
yeah.
So these were like kind of Christo sculptures because they'd have these temporary structures. They'd have like this mesh on them. They'd catch the light and shadows of other buildings, And conceptually, it was really cool because then they'd, these are temporary structures. They come apart and then be kind of mixed up, and they'd appear in different parts around the city. So it was like this architectural common denominator. And, I started like, that was how I first started to kind of address ideas in art and say like, here's something I'm trying to get at. And I was, somewhat literal in it. I mean, I just make these repetitive sculptures and stuff like that, and like as like analogous to scaffolding. But again, that's just because I had nothing inside of me that was like, okay, I'm just going to do the swoosh thing, like, because that's not there.
There's have you seen there's a program called How To with John Wilson. He's a New York documentary maker who films literally everything, and then he's done 3 series of this show. I think it might come out on HBO, but I watched it over here. And they're different topics, and it's kind of meandering the way it works out. But the second episode in the first series was called How to Put Up Scaffolding, and it was very much looking at that thing in New York of saying, you don't realize how much scaffolding there is until you pay attention to it, and then you realize that it is everywhere.
Right.
And it's part so many buildings that like scaffolding is part of the building because it kind of has to be, and then laws change about the structures of buildings and all of that kind of thing. And it's like, it is that thing. It's like there's an element of creation that's bolted onto all these things that not a lot of people notice, but when you do, you can't stop seeing it all the time.
Right.
I think you'd very much enjoy that program.
I will definitely look that one up. In fact, actually, after college, when I graduated, I applied for and got a very small travel grant to go to China and the idea was to look at their use of bamboo for scaffolding, because it was, they would just 70-story skyscraper, and their scaffolding was just bamboo lashed together with these plastic ties. And I mean, that was incredible, like from a physical standpoint and from like a aesthetic standpoint. But what, interested me, because I was always like obsessed with like these little modules and like the repetitive pieces, what, became the thrust of that project was like, oh, what's it like when a culture builds scaffolding with this thing that they use for so many other, uses, like, and so I just went and basically toured around and photographed stuff. And, that was in the 90s before China just really, modernized. So yeah, exactly. But they still do, they still do the bamboo scaffolding.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think we can expect a bamboo series? Spin forward 10 years. Aaron's all about the bamboo
now. I lived one of the houses we lived in Charlottesville had a bamboo grove. So I made some stuff with it, but mostly it was just like keeping it back because it grows like crazy.
Yeah, it does. It grows like Billy-O, doesn't it?
Yeah, right.
What else? What other questions did I have? To be honest, I think I've run through all my main questions. Here we go. Tips for people who want to do digitized machine embroidery, and tips for people who want to unlock the power of their sewing machine. Have you got like your top 3 tips for making good use of your machine?
I think it depends entirely on how, like, do they want to use pre-designed patterns, or do they want to like explore? Because I probably used, besides the stars for that American flag, I probably stitched one pre-designed pattern like in all the years I've been doing this. So I don't know that world. I mean, what I would say is maybe it's good to use those to learn stuff. Although I think, those usually come as stitch files, so they're a little harder to pick apart, but you could probably get in there and see, how it works. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's like, using, find some pre-stitch pattern you like and really pay attention to how it stitches, because again, it's a construction project. It's layered in a certain way. It's, lines are formed in a certain way. And that's, when these pre-stitch patterns look good, they look good for a reason, because they're well crafted. So, that's one way of learning. It's like was that Scott Joplin, who learned to play piano from like those player pianos with the rolls. He would just have it play, and then he'd follow along with his fingers, and that's how he
That's
learned.
amazing. Right.
So like that's one thing. And then if I mean, I think the other is like if you wanted to make your own stuff, just you know, find some idea. You know, it could be like the simplest idea possible, but try to translate that idea into some uh, element of stitching. You know, it could be a character, it could be text, it could be you know nature, but think about like what the expression you're going for is, and then how the lines that you're afforded that you can make, or even if you're doing freeform, like I haven't really done freeform, digital embroidery, but an idea is always going to be the thing that kind of carries you through with interest. I mean, it's very hard to maintain interest if you're not trying to reach a goal because you have something in your head. I think, at least for me.
There's do you think it's worth, like, for beginners, because sometimes it can almost be you're learning a new technology and trying to think of a new idea could be really difficult. So you could get off just recreating a logo that you've seen or something like that, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
something that you don't have to burn your soul to create in the first
sure.
place.
Yeah, yeah, and it's yeah. I mean, that's I think the much of the history of art is like copying something and seeing how it
Mm,
was made. So um, yeah, and it's a great like there's such versatile machines that like, and people are going to have different interests going in. Like mine, I said I narrowed it down to like that white thread, but like maybe it's the colors, that are drawing people in. What I got to say, the thing about the domestic machine that was really gives a lot more flexibility than an industrial machine is I could go in, like create some pattern and then go in the software and just delete all the stitch points between like the ends, and then you just get these really long threads. And
yeah, yeah.
like I really like that. I kind of miss that because I just don't get on that machine anymore.
Mm. I'm going to do a shout out to my man Eric Campbell, who used to write a column for Mr. X Stitch called Ghost in the
Oh
Embroidery Machine.
yeah, yeah, I follow
And
him.
yeah, his YouTube channel, he does it somehow. I mean, what he knows about like digitized embroidery, he knows everything.
Right.
He's also amazingly managed to do, at current count, 190 weekly podcasts
Mhm.
about machine embroidery, and
Right.
yet doesn't seem to be tired yet or something. He's got so much to learn. So I think, yeah, for anybody who needs to understand any of the technology and also like the philosophy and stuff, I think Eric's a great resource to go on
Definitely.
there. I'm guessing you quite enjoy digging around inside that software then and kind of coming up with structures and seeing what you can achieve.
Yeah, and that's like when I made that jump from the domestic machine and the software that came with it, which was at best rudimentary, to I use Wilcom,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives a level of control, um, where you can isolate things from something else, so you can get at other aspects of it, and it can do quite a bit. And when I was searching for the ideas I wanted to push, um, like it had the capability to do those things and then some. And
Mm.
so I've been a big fan of that software, and it's been very stable and reliable and versatile.
Yeah, shout out to Wilcom as well, because I know they give a lot back to like the machine embroidery sector as well. I know
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Do you find there's much of a difference between what you plan to make and what actually comes out at the back, or have you got that pretty well nailed down?
um it's I think when it's good, you're still discovering things. I have a writer friend that says, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you can still, come up with things that are, new to you, then that'll be good for the viewer. Um, and I gotta say, I'm kind of pathological when it comes to not being able to do the same thing over and over again. Like, and it comes at a cost, to like, it's that same impulse, like, oh, I'm just going to do the next thing and learn the next thing. And,
but at least in this instance, you're doing different things within a larger, broader context that may have some economical stability underpinning it.
Right. And that's, was always a sense of like, here's like not just a skill set I'm building, but like a process that I'm building. And this process can be scaled, whether I'm ambitious enough to actually do that. Like, with if I had, you know, staff on the machines, like I could do more digitizing. Like, I don't know if I'd ever get there, but like I kind of built that into the process as something that is potential. But like I said, not sure if I'm the guy to actually pull that off.
Although one day when we come along and you've wrapped a building in a thing, again, we will understand when we say. Right, I'm going to move on to some tricky questions now. Now we've done all the easy, let's talk about art process and all that sort of stuff. Do you have a favorite band?
Yes, I do. Humphreys McGee, who,
okay,
not sure if you've ever heard them. They are like it's a kind of a metal-ish jam band, which it's like if Ozzy Osbourne and the Grateful Dead had a baby. And my best friend got me into them, and they're a touring band, and you can get all, like, there's an app called nugs.net, nugs.net, where they have tons of artists and their live shows. And this band you could pretty much get every show they've done for 25 years. And, they've never repeated a set. It's kind of like me, like, don't want to do the same thing over and over again. But, the sound that they create is intense. And, it's a great joy. And also, for my best friend who got me into this, we always had a hard time keeping in touch. And because of this band, we're always sending stuff back and forth to each other. So it's actually been a really great part of life to have these days.
Do you listen to music while you're working?
Yeah, definitely. Although I find it hard to sew on a sewing machine, like if I'm using a serger or a sewing machine, because the sound of what's happening is really important. Because, you can, things go wrong in sound. Like, you can hear it before you see it, I think. And so I find like I can't have headphones on when I'm sewing. I can have it on in the background, kind of low, but I do like to work with music.
Do you think we could play a game where we play the sounds of stitches and we can tell whether you think they're in good shape or not?
I know, right?
Start to make you twitch because something's going awry somewhere or something.
Exactly.
I like it. Do you have a favorite book, or what was the last good book that you read?
The last good book I read was by a British journalist, Douglas Murray, on the War on the West. Really interesting stuff. It is. I will just say that, like, it was
thought-provoking.
Thought-provoking for sure.
The twist at the end. It turns out it was a romantic comedy.
I know, exactly.
Do you listen to podcasts much? Obviously, other than NeedleXChange.
I have done some podcasts. Sometimes I find it hard to get into it, but I've been a fan of Sam Harris's podcast, Making Sense, these days. I don't know if you know that one. But
I know of him because he appears on all the other ones, doesn't he? All the Lex Friedmans and all those kind of. If you ever want to listen to someone talk for 3 hours, and put the words Lex Friedman or Andrew Huberman, or just all of the like big talkers, isn't it? They go on for ages.
Yeah,
I haven't quite got to that level yet. Okay. What I was going to ask you ages ago was there's a guy on YouTube, and I think he's called Stephen Machine. I was going to ask you how you feel about Rube Goldberg machines, because I feel like they might appeal to you.
Like if I, anytime I see a video start, I have to watch it finish. And I do, like, yeah, those things are pretty incredible. It's funny. I feel like, yeah, growing up, you asked me like what I like to make. I think there was always an element of like a Rube Goldberg machine in there. Like, how do you kind of do something that's going to like make some other thing happen? Yeah, definitely.
Whenever I watch them, because like I said, I found a couple of guys on YouTube recently. There's one guy who's got like 3 million subscribers or whatever. And whenever I see them, I'm so jealous because I really wish I could have the time to make those stuff because sometimes they're just so bloody clever,
Right,
and
right.
it's not even like trick shots. It's just those, the fun ways they can make connections between different things, doing different things and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Thought that would
And
appeal.
the domino setups, those I like too.
Oh man,
And
alive! Can you
just
imagine the
watching those.
stress? I feel like the stress of those. I mean, I know with a lot of these Rube Gold machines, they'll kind of like take 35 is the one that eventually works or whatever. But with the
Right.
dominoes, yeah, I like watching them with my kids as well because they are just a little bit mind blowing. And also, I'm saying the likelihood of doing a domino roll in my house very small, too much carpet, quite frankly.
Right.
And then film or TV show, last good or favorite?
Well, Spinal Tap, probably favorite. Um, you know, it just like applies to every aspect of life. There's always a moment where you're like, and that correlates with that. Uh, Last good one, which was a great one from last year was called "You Hurt My Feelings" with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It's a,
Okay.
it's about like creativity. It's about a woman who is a writer, and she's working on a book, and she happens like she sees her husband with a friend in in a store, and she's like sneaking up on him or about to come up on him, and she hears that he's telling his friend like, oh, her book sucks. And it's just a part, like it's just an area of human experience that I've never seen done in a film, and done very, very well.
Excellent. That does sound, yeah, yeah. God, that's dangerous, isn't it? I don't,
Yeah.
well, I mean, thankfully, my wife's work is just purely marvelous. I say that in case she's listening. So, yeah, how does your family enjoy your work? Just out of interest.
Actually, uh, it's been a real nice bonding thing for me and my kids because they became, they're makers in their own right. Um, and I remember like for them, it was always costuming. Um, they were just into superheroes and stuff like that growing up, and I would, you know, try and show them just techniques along the way, and uh, then there was a point when I guess my older son was probably like 11 or so, and I had taught him how to score cardboard with an X-Acto knife, and he's like, it's okay, Dad, I got it. And I'm like, I mean, I had to walk away and just hope he didn't cut his finger off. He didn't. um, but yeah, and I know like with my younger son too, like whenever I am working on something, I will show it to him, and like we just discuss the ideas, and that's been a very rich give and take. So definitely, you know, enjoy that part of parenting quite a bit. It's been very
I mean, how do you feel about the sort of context that you're in? Because textile arts, and particularly when you're talking like large scale applique, quilting, that kind of territory being very much an American tradition as well. How do
yeah.
you feel about being part of that equation?
It's always been interesting. Like there was always the kind of what's the novelty factor of being a guy doing this, because
Hmm.
traditionally it's a female centered craft, and in one sense it gives you like like again a little novelty that you can kind of use to your advantage.
Mm.
But at the same time, I've met just a lot of interesting people, men and women who do it. And it's been interesting also to see, when I started it, doing, textile stuff, textiles wasn't not nearly as kind of a hot medium as it has become. So that's been encouraging to see that I've like, you know, picked a good field. Again, my level of ambition though might be the only thing, uh, standing in my way of pushing it to certain levels. But
it always amuses me how sometimes it's like I once did a workshop where we were stitching lyrics onto chairs in a pop-up shop in Camden in London, and it was like about the coolest thing on the planet at that precise moment in time, and then half an hour later it just goes back to being like a little old lady craft where it's so funny how it can
right.
be, in the right setting.
Well, that actually, when I started doing the flags, the place where I went to get my machine and kind of learn about it was inside of like a Joann's Fabrics. It's a chain in the States, and they had a partnership with Husqvarna, so they would have machines in there. And yeah, all the people I interacted with were like women over 60, and so I was always a bit of an outlier in that sense.
But there'll also be the ladies, I bet, who some of them truly appreciate the stuff you're doing with the light and the shimmer and the direction and all that because they just know it. And it's not necessarily something you can just talk about with your friends down at the local coffee shop or whatever. So there
Right.
must be some
But
people who just really love it.
yeah, and what was interesting was when I would go and stand out with those flags early on, I noticed like people would just instinctively want to reach out and touch it, like for that tactility. And as someone who, my background was as much architecture as art, like I was never like an art world person. And I always found, galleries to be a bit standoffish and, stuffy. And I really like that aspect that people felt so connected tactily to the medium. And it was one of the reasons that I thought like this is a good medium to go into because there is this natural attraction to it, and it's not the like standoffish.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And I think there's also this fundamental, like most people can kind of understand how you've made it. Maybe not to a really great degree, but any of this stuff with the needle and thread, it's so familiar
Mm-hmm.
as a global culture or whatever that it automatically engenders people, endears people, one of those two in
Yeah,
your direction.
yeah. There's just I think like an innate connection to it.
Mm. Is there an interesting fact that not a lot of people know about Aaron Fein?
Uh, well, I mean the people that I know it, but like in terms of
People listening to this podcast, on the other hand.
yeah, like from a professional standpoint, like one of the main things in my life is a long time practice of Tai Chi,
Oh,
and that's been yeah very very deep ongoing thing that I think informs the work I do as well. You know, I would say also from that conceptual standpoint of remember that I mentioned that project of the string wall where it was the threaded rods and the string. Like to me, that had like all those elements of yin and yang, where you have like rigid rods and flexible string, and then when you put them together, the string becomes flexible, and then the rods soften because they're covered with string. And there's just always this interplay of opposites, and that is a very important part of my work you know is this interplay of opposites.
how long have you been practicing Tai Chi?
Since before 9/11, I remember that. I started when I was actually, remember I said I went to China. I discovered it right before my trip. I was trying to learn some Chinese language, and I went to a place where they were doing demonstration classes of different things, and I saw a woman doing Tai Chi, and I said, I have to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, been going ever since.
I did it for a year back in the day. This would have been like 2003, something like that. And it also coincided with me being a town councillor in my local town.
Wow.
And for a while, I was also the chair of the planning committee. It's not a big town, so being the chair of the planning committee is more like, does this single story extension, whatever. But the way it would work is we would do Tai Chi at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, and the town council meetings were at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. So I was so chilled when I went to those meetings. It was
Yeah,
unbelievable. I was
right.
virtually unruffleable. And I just loved it. I love the fact that like you, obviously it's more nuanced, but you'll never be perfect at Tai Chi, right? Because there's always something. There's always a little bit more of kind of breathing and placement and all of that kind of stuff.
For sure. Yes, actually, I've had for 7 or 8 months now this problem with my neck, and I'm just like keep trying to work through it. But like I think part of it is like, well, I'll just keep doing the practice, and hopefully someday that'll dissipate. But at least I have my full range of motion, and maybe I wouldn't if I wasn't doing the practice. So
yeah, and there is probably there's a bit of a kind of slowness as well in the production of your art, isn't it? There's a sort of an in and out and a breathing and a sort of just you can't do it at a pace, can you?
No, it doesn't get rushed. I mean, it can't get rushed.
And that's probably quite nice. Do you enjoy the journey of making it?
Yeah, like I'd say that the process of going through something repetitive, which I have to do, like if I'm making a shape that has 1,000 little shapes in it, and I have to just like go click on a bunch of things, select them, do a transformation to them, go to the next thing, do that, like that. Even before I started Tai Chi, like that type of work was very soothing to me. And it was, I learned, when I was later in life diagnosed ADHD, that you develop coping mechanisms for, how you work. And those are just definitely coping mechanisms. And they, like I said, they soothe, and they also get me somewhere.
Yeah. Fab. Hey, Aaron, thanks for having a needle exchange with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Been great.
Thanks for joining me on another Needle Exchange. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to email hello@needle.exchange, that's NEEDL.exchange, with any thoughts, comments or feedback. And if you want to keep up with all the news, sign up to the Needle Exchange mailing list at bit.ly/needle exchange. See you next time.